Okay, so now we're going to look at question number 6. How do the first two sentences in paragraph 1 contribute to the development of the plot? The first thing we need to do is we need to reread the first two sentences and think about what effect those two sentences have on setting up the story and establishing the plot and moving the plot forward. And that's really what they mean when they ask you, how does something contribute? They really want you to think about the sequence of events and cause and effect, and how the story would be different if that event wasn't there. All right, so when I look at the first two sentences, we're talking about right here, Alice opened the door and found that it led into a small passage, not much larger than a rat hole. She knelt down and looked along the passage into the loveliest garden you ever saw. How she longed to get out of that dark hall and wander about among those beds of bright flowers and those cool fountains, but she thought she could not even get her head through the doorway. And even if my head would go through, thought poor Alice, it would be of very little use without my shoulders. Okay, so those are the first two sentences. And so now I really have to think about, what do I learn about the story? What is going to be the result of these first two sentences? In these first two sentences, I am introduced to Alice. I'm introduced to the fact that she is near a door, and when she opens the door, she sees a garden. And at the end of that garden is basically what Alice wants. She wants to get to that garden. However, these two sentences are also introducing a problem. It's introducing the fact that she cannot even get her head through the doorway. So even though she longs to go to the garden, there's an obstacle standing in her way. So now I'm going to look back at the answer choices and see which one most closely matches what these two sentences are establishing. In A, it says the beauty of the garden prepares the reader for the events to follow. All right, is the garden beautiful? Yes, it is beautiful. However, is that the key to these first two sentences? Am I only being introduced to the beauty, or am I being introduced to something else? Alice raises questions about the garden that will be answered by other characters. Well, there aren't any answers that we're reading, and so this logically cannot be the answer. It does not make sense. It doesn't match any text evidence that is in this excerpt. Alice's wish to enter the garden sets off the events that follow. Okay, it's true. Alice does wish to go to the garden. Does her desire to go to the garden result in future events that the passage describes? If so, then this would be the answer choice. That would be correct. And then finally I have the blooming flowers in the garden establish the theme of growth and decay that is explored in the passage. Okay. This is possible. This is a very deep kind of answer choice. Do I think that the theme of this excerpt is growth and decay? Very tempting choice. However, I don't know that there is a lot of descriptions of things decaying. There's definitely descriptions of things growing, but I would really have to go back into the passage and see if there are any descriptions of things decaying, deteriorating, getting ugly, and being destroyed. And if there are, then possibly that might be one of the themes of this excerpt. Okay, so once I have my answer choice for A, again, I'm going to do the same thing that I've done for every question for B. I'm going to look and see which evidence would most closely support my answer choice for the first part. Okay, choice A is, oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. So what's happening in that part of the story? This shows his wish to be smaller. And so this would match an answer choice that's connecting the opening lines with Alice wanting to go to the garden. There seemed to be no use in waiting by the little door, so she went back to the table, half hoping she might find another key on it, or at any rate, a book of rules for shutting people up like telescopes. All right, so right here, this is describing Alice leaving the passage, which she can't get into anyway, and the next series of events that she does after she looks and sees the garden. First, however, she waited a few minutes to see if she was going to shrink any further. All right, so this actually comes after she drinks or eats the cake and is getting smaller. And so this is more directly tied to later on in the story. And she tried her best to climb up one of the legs of the table, but it was too slippery. And when she had tired herself out with trying, the poor little thing sat down and cried. Okay, so this comes after she leaves the key and she's too little to go back and get it. So I see a lot of events that are kind of related to each other, but again, I'm looking for the evidence that's most closely related to what I think the opening lines of the story are doing.